They are freaking out, like actually freaking out. Not the polite kind of uncomfortable where someone just changes the subject and moves on. I'm talking about the kind of freaking out where people go quiet in a specific way, where you catch them looking at you differently, where they are pulling other people aside and having conversations in hushed voices that they would never have out loud in front of you. And what's wild, what is absolutely wild is that what's freaking them out is you. Not something you did wrong, not some mistake you made. What's freaking them out is that you were right. You were right about all of it. You were right 200%. And now they can see it with their own eyes. And it's terrifying them. And I need you to sit with that for a second, because this is the moment you've been waiting for without even knowing you were waiting for it. Everything you noticed, everything you felt every time you said something, and people looked at you like you were being dramatic, for someone crazy. The truth is coming to the surface right now, and it's uncomfortable. Yeah, and the people around you are starting to feel the ground shift under their feet. Stay with me. Stay with me here, because I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening and why it matters more than you think. You have been seeing things for a long time, not in some vague, mystical way. I mean, you literally see things. You walk into a room and you read it like a weather system. You can feel who is carrying tension they haven't named yet. You can feel when someone's smile is a performance versus when it's real. You can hear what someone is actually saying underneath the words they are choosing out loud. And for actual years, people around you responded to this by doing one very specific thing. They minimized it. They called you too sensitive. They called you over-dramatic. They said you were reading too much into things, projecting, being paranoid. And some of them, the ones who were a little more pointed about it, called you something worse than that. Something worse. They made you feel like the problem was your perception, not the reality you were perceiving. Like your clarity was actually a flaw. Like seeing things clearly was somehow embarrassing. And here's the thing about that. Here's the thing that no one ever said out loud, but you felt it in your bones. The people who worked the hardest to convince you that you were wrong were almost always the exact people you were right about. Think about that. I'll stop here. When someone is genuinely doing something, actually nothing, worth noticing, they don't need to put that much energy, effort into convincing you that you are crazy. That energy, that specific defensiveness, that's information. And you felt it. You knew it. You just didn't have enough external validation to stand fully in it. So you did what a lot of perceptive people learn to do. You got quieter. You kept your observations to yourself. You stopped saying things out loud. Not because you stopped seeing. No, you never stopped seeing. But because the cost of saying what you saw felt too high. And the loneliness of being right in private felt at least more sustainable than being right out loud and getting punished for it. I want to give you something really concrete here, because I think you need to feel exactly what I'm describing. Let me paint this scene. You are in a group setting. Could be work, could be family, could be a social thing. Someone is talking, confident, smooth, saying all the right things. And the people around you are nodding, laughing at the right moments, taking it all in. And you're sitting there feeling this thing in your chest, this low frequency discomfort, because you are watching the words and you're also watching the energy, and they don't match. The words are warm, but the energy underneath is cold and calculated. The smile hits the surface, the face before it hits the eyes. The concern sounds genuine, but has this almost imperceptible aftertaste of performance. You look around to see if anyone else is picking this up, and nobody is. They are just there, nodding by it completely, and you feel this wave of something that's not quite loneliness and not quite frustration, but it lives somewhere between the two, because you know what you're seeing. You know it in your body. Body knows first. But there is no one to say it to. No one. So you file it away. You add it to the long internal document that you have been building for years. This private record of things you noticed that nobody else seemed to catch. And then what happens? What always happens? Time passes, the mask slips, the thing you saw starts to show itself in ways that other people can finally detect. And suddenly people are surprised, shocked even, having conversations like it came out of nowhere, like this is brand new information. And you're sitting there thinking, I knew this, I said this, I saw this coming from miles away, and I stayed quiet because no one was ready to hear it. And now everyone's acting like this is a revelation. That gap, the gap between when you knew and when everyone else caught up, that's the space you have been living in your whole life. And it's exhausting. Yeah, it's really exhausting in a way that is really hard to explain to people who don't experience it. Because from the outside, it can look like nothing. It looks like you are just going about your day, but internally you are carrying this constant low-grade weight of unconfirmed truth, of knowing without being known, of having a clarity that feels like a gift and a burden at exactly the same time. Here's where it gets interesting. Here's where things are actually shifting, because something is happening right now that hasn't quite happened before. The gap is closing. The things you have been quietly tracking are becoming undeniable to people who had every reason to deny them. And their reaction isn't just, oh, wow, you were right. the reaction is something more like vertigo, something more like a person who has been living with a particular story about how things work. And that story is cracking, and the crack is shaped exactly like you. Yeah, like your perception, like the thing you tried to tell them and they dismissed. And that destabilization is coming out as something that looks like looks a lot like freaking out, because that's what it is. There is this particular kind of silence that people go into when they realize they were wrong about someone who was trying to warn them. You've probably noticed it in the last few weeks. People getting careful around you, people choosing their words differently, people who used to dismiss you very casually, now being strangely, unusually precise. Like they've noticed something and they're trying to figure out how to relate to you in light of it. Maybe someone said something to you recently, something small, something almost offhand, that was actually an acknowledgement. Not a big dramatic apology, because people rarely do those. But a quiet, low-key, you were right about that, or I should have listened, or I keep thinking about what you said moment. Those moments are landing differently now because they are enough of them that they are forming a pattern, and the pattern is clear. People are recalibrating around you. And while that's happening externally, something else is happening to you internally. And I want to name it because I think it matters. When you have spent a long time having your perception questioned, it doesn't sometimes it does something to you. It creates this habit of second guessing yourself, even when your gut is screaming. You get very good at internal negotiation, talking yourself out of what you know, moderating the intensity of your own clarity, pre-editing your observations before they even leave your mouth, because you have already imagined this reaction. You become a person who knows a tremendous amount of expresses maybe a quarter of it. And that compression, that constant containment takes a real toll. Not in a dramatic way, in a quiet way. The kind of way that builds up over years until you can't quite remember what it felt like to just say what you see without bracing for impact. And here is the thing that's true right now, in this moment. The external validation that you've been waiting for, the confirmation that you were not crazy, that you were not dramatic, that you were just seeing that what you were seeing was right, was real. It's arriving, not all at once, not in the form of a grand public acknowledgement, but in this series of small undeniable moments where reality is aligning with your read of it so completely that the people around you literally cannot explain it away anymore. They tried the coincidence explanation. They tried the lucky guess explanation. They tried the you are just perceptive explanation. but which sounds like a compliment, but which they were actually using as a diminishment. Like, yeah, you're perceptive. But that's just a personality trait. It doesn't mean what you think it means. And all those explanations are running out because the pattern is too consistent. Because you've been right too many times about too many specific things for it to be noise. And now they are sitting with that, and it's deeply uncomfortable for them. And here's why. When you realize that someone has been seeing something clearly that you have been refusing to see, it doesn't just tell you something about them. It tells you something about yourself. It tells you about the ways you were invested in a particular version of events, about the things you didn't want to be true, so you figured out the evidence that they were. About the moments where the easier thing was to dismiss the person with the clear eyes rather than deal with what those clear eyes were reflecting back at you. And that kind of self-reckoning is uncomfortable in a very particular way. It has this sting of regret attached to it. This awareness of what it cost you in time, in trust, in choices you made based on a picture you now have to admit was incomplete. And the person who has been standing there this whole time with the accurate picture, there is this something almost unbearable about looking at them clearly now. Because looking at them clearly means acknowledging that you chose not to look at them clearly before. Confused? That's what's underneath the freaking out. It's not just, whoa, they were right. It's the dawning recognition of the shape of what that means. And some people move through that with grace. They get quiet, they reflect, they come back around with more genuine openness. And some people respond to that kind of discomfort by getting weird. Yeah, by getting distant, by finding new reasons to be skeptical of you, because it's easier. Yeah, it's easier than sitting with the old skepticism and what it cost them. You might be experiencing both of those types right now. People who are coming toward you with more respect, more real curiosity, more genuine, tell me more energy, and people who are pulling back in a way that has this strange, cold quality to it that is also, in its own way, an acknowledgement. Because you don't need to create distance from someone who was never to treat you your worldview. Let me talk about your timing for a second, because this is something that people around you have definitely noticed, even if they have never named it directly. You have this quality, and I don't think you are always conscious of it, where you seem to show up exactly when something important is about to happen, or leave exactly before something goes sideways, or say the one thing that someone needed to hear in the exact moment they needed to hear it. It looks like luck from the outside, but it's not. It's that your nervous system is calibrated to pick up information that other people's nervous system filter out. You feel this shift in energy before the shift becomes visible. You sense the change of temperature before the thermostat moves. You read the micro signals, the tiny hesitations, the slight changes or in tone, the thing that's conspicuously absent from a conversation that should include it. And your body responds to that information by positioning you accordingly. And people have been watching this happen for a while, and they have been feeling it under lucky because that was the explanation that didn't require them to expand their understanding of how you work. But you've done it too many times now. It stopped looking like luck. And the people paying close enough attention and they are starting to ask questions, they don't quite have language for it yet. And there are people, maybe specific people you are thinking of right now, who went out of their way to make you feel small for seeing what you see, who didn't just passive dismiss you, but actively worked to undermine your confidence in your own perception, who needed you to be wrong, because if you were right, certain things became untenable. Yeah. And those people, those specific people, are having the hardest time right now because the thing they tried to suppress is surfacing anyway. Truth has this quality where it doesn't actually need anyone's permission to exist. It just keeps accumulating evidence until the weight of it becomes undeniable. Yeah, truth. And for those people who invested real energy in the denial, their undeniability is hitting particularly hard. You might not see it directly. They might not come to you, but it's happening. People who called you paranoid are now noticing exactly what you were noticing and not knowing what to do with it. People who told you you were too sensitive are now feeling the thing you tried to tell them was there. And they don't have the years of quiet practice that you have. They are feeling it raw, without the framework, without the long internal relationship with this kind of knowing, and it's disorienting them in a real way. It's sad. Here is what I want you to say to you about all of this. And I want to say it clearly because I think you need to hear it in plain language without any softening. You are not dramatic. You are not paranoid. You are not too much or too intense or too whatever explanation people use to create distance from what you were bringing. You were accurate. You were seeing something real with unusual clarity. And the fact that other people were not ready to see it didn't make it less real. Their inability to confirm it didn't mean it wasn't there. Their discomfort with your clarity was their problem to work through, not evidence that your clarity was a problem. And every single time you doubted yourself because someone made you feel like your perception was a liability, that doubt was wrong. Not sometimes wrong. Wrong every time. the version of you that learned to quiet down, to pre-edit, to question your own read of things before giving voice to it. That version developed those habits for understandable reasons. It was a reasonable response to an unreasonable environment. Sorry. But those habits are no longer serving you, because what's happening right now, this moment of undeniable visible confirmation, is the universe asking you a very direct question. And the question is, now that you can see that you were right, are you going to give yourself permission? Are you going to give yourself permission to trust yourself going forward? Not the moderated, pre-filtered, social negotiated version of your perception. The actual thing, the real, uncomfortable, sometimes, frequently inconvenient clarity that you carry in your body every single day. Because that clarity, that thing that people have spent years trying to make you feel strange about, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's not a glitch. It's the most valuable thing about you. It's literally the thing that makes you able to navigate situations that other people walk into blind. It's the thing that has protected you and the people you love more times than you will ever have full external confirmation of. And it's also right now the thing that is quietly waking up the people around you. Not because you're performing it or pushing it, but because truth has a frequency. Yeah. And when it's consistent enough and close enough, people start to feel it even when they are actively not looking for it. And once they feel it, they cannot quite unfeel it. Yeah. And that's what you're watching happen. That's the freaking out. Yeah. That's the terrified of your truth. That's the finally seeing what you have been seeing. It's not random. It's the some kind of effect of you being exactly who you are for long enough that reality had no choice but to catch up. So here's where you land this with this. Not as a conclusion, not as a neat ending, but as something more like an opening. The moment where someone finally believes what you have been saying all along is not the end of something. It's actually the beginning of something. It's the beginning of you not having the carry to carry the weight of unconfirmed truth alone. The beginning of having your perception be something that's treated as the asset it actually is. And it's the beginning of you giving yourself real, genuine, full permission to trust what you know. Not as a radical act, not as something you have to defend or justify, just as the baseline, ordinary, completely normal relationships with your own knowing that you deserve to have. You've always been right about this. You've always been right. And now, finally, everyone else is starting to see it too. Yeah, so trust yourself, trust your gut.